So I'm really happy today to present two guests who are going to tell us the story of how NASA satellites help plan the future for Palau fish stocks.
Hi, good morning, Chansey. So I'm Fabio Siksei, and I'm currently the acting chief for the Division of Coastal Fisheries here at the Bureau of Fisheries in Palau.
Thank you, Fabio. Jonathan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jonathan MacKay. I'm a marine spatial scientist, and I support the global aquaculture team at the Nature Conservancy.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're really excited to have both of you here to tell this really cool story. So let's start by talking about what was the local challenge or the local problem that really needed to be solved.
Just recently, a couple of years ago, our fishers started realizing that they are traveling farther, they're spending much more time fishing, and they weren't catching as much fish that they were catching years before. So we did a data per stock assessment partnership with the Nature Conservancy, and the results of that show that about 60% of the fish caught were still immature, so they haven't had a chance to reproduce. And also, so we worked with them to provide management measures for those targeted species, as well as providing sources of alternative livelihood. And so aquaculture was provided to the fishers as an alternative livelihood option. But at that time, there hasn't been an assessment of where would the areas be like the most suitable areas for aquaculture. And then there also wasn't guidelines or management measures for that industry. And so this project really brought in the technical expertise, the resource users, like to sit and really identify those areas, and also with the available science to guide in guiding us identify those potential areas, as well as those management measures or guidelines for developing aquaculture industry.
Can you tell us a little bit about who was it that came together to try to solve the challenges that were going on?
TNC stands for the Nature Conservancy, brought together various government agencies, including the Environmental Quality Protection Board, BMR, which is now the Bureau of Fisheries, the local PAN network, so that's Protected Area Network, Polaris is the Palau Automated Land and Resource Information System, as well as the Palau Community College, together with other stakeholders, came together at the initial meeting in 2018 to help solve some of the problems in Palau.
Jonathan, can you tell us a little bit about what were the tools that everyone was using now to assist the local community with their problem?
We brought together various data sources, including NASA satellite data. And to be more specific, we used MODIS and MUR, as well as Landsat data, as well as many other data sources to represent the environment, the natural resources, the industries in and around Palau. And we also did what's called participatory mapping. And that's where we engaged with the stakeholders, and we had them draw on physical maps with a pen where important fishing areas, where important areas that we could develop aquaculture might be. And we combined all this data, organized it, and we developed rules for each of these data sets. And we ran what's called a suitability analysis. And the suitability analysis helps determine the best areas for aquaculture for finfish and giant clams in Palau.
Were there any other ways that you actually worked with the people in Palau to use these data to help with the issues you were trying to solve?
Yeah, so at the Nature Conservancy, we actually have an office in Palau. So we have local staff on the ground. And with their assistance, we organize several in-person stakeholder meetings to discuss the project with various stakeholders, bring everyone together around the common themes. And this included, local government, different organizations, and actually aquaculture farmers themselves. So we brought everyone together, and we actually had some of the global experts visit Palau for these meetings.
And how would you summarize the result of using all these different types of data?
Sure. So starting with the data that we were able to get from satellites. So we were able to get sea surface temperature. This tells us the temperature of the seawater around Palau, which is really important for aquaculture, especially for giant clams, because much like corals, giant clams can bleach. So they lose their pigment, but they also lose the symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae. But for this project, we created several main products. One of which was a guidance manual for marine aquaculture. That's for spatial planning and also for management in Palau. And that brought together many of the guiding principles around planning for aquaculture. We also introduced case studies from other countries. And we also had the guidelines for the spatial planning. As well as this, we created a curriculum for training, and that was to build capacity in Palau around running a marine spatial model. And we were able to get 20 students enrolled in that training program. And then finally, we built a web map and decision support tool. And this decision support tool, it displays the suitability analysis, it displays the results for that, as well as guides users through establishing their own aquaculture farm, where you can draw a box. It'll return information along the coast of Palau, and it'll return the suitability of a specific site that they can draw. And they can use this information for aquaculture planning.
What was the impact of this teamwork on your local community?
I think it was a really good thing that it brought in different users, because we had to, when we were, Jonathan mentioned the mapping, we had to identify routes for boats, distance from the ports, just taking into account the different uses of the marine space, and also the biological needs or requirements that the giant clams and fish need in order to grow successfully and to have a successful aquaculture program. So I think that was really important. It's the guidance and the recommendations that were presented through that. So because for so many years we've just been promoting aquaculture, but there hasn't been really guidelines on where to have your clam pens or the fish cages.
Fabio, can you tell us, please, how is the teamwork and the data that you use, how is that helping your community today?
So it's really, it's helping us develop aquaculture into like a bigger scale, because before it would be just these small pilot projects and then we have like one clam farm, but now you have this assessment of the suitable areas, and then so we know that we can have this X number of clam farms or fish cages at this particular site, and there would be kind of an assurance that the surrounding environment wouldn't be impacted as much, or and also taking into consideration the biodiversity that will be around that area. So that's how it had helped the local community.
Would either of you like to talk about kind of whether this kind of collaboration and these kind of data can help support other communities around the world?
Yeah, some of the studies that were in our guidance documents point to some areas that have successfully established their aquaculture industry. There's examples from South Australia, as well as the Philippines. And some of the methods that we use for the suitability analysis were developed in partnership with the federal government in the US. So NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, those methods are shared between TNC and NOAA. And we're actually at the Nature Conservancy, we're going to be taking some of these methods to other developing countries. We're going to be working in Africa. And then later on, we're going to be working closer to home in Mexico as well.
Thank you very much. I think that was great. And I just wanted to thank both of you very much for joining us today and telling us this important story and how it can potentially be helpful in other places around the world too. So thank you very much.